Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Patricia Phillip Art Museum. Thank you, Art Museum. We aim to be a part of both campus and community in vital and dynamic ways, exemplified by free admission, free programming, and bringing world-class exhibitions to campus like Relational Undercurrents, Contemporary Art of the Caribbean Archipelago, curated by Tatiana Flores. This exhibition was organized by the Museum of Latin American Art in Long Beach, and we are thrilled to have the president and CEO of MOLA, Lourdes Ramos Rivas, here today. It is my great pleasure to introduce our esteemed guest curator and moderator today, along with our distinguished panelists. Tatiana Flores is Associate Professor in the Department of Latino and Caribbean Department of Art and in the Department of Art History, and an affiliate of the Critical Caribbean Studies program at Rutgers University. A specialist in modern and contemporary Latin American art, she is the author of Mexico's Revolutionary Avant-Garde, From Estretismo to 3030, published by Yale University Press in 2013. Her second book project, In Progress, focuses on the art and visual culture of Venezuela during the presidency of Hugo Chavez. Her exhibition, Relational Undercurrents, is a tour de force and has been on view at the Wallach Art Gallery at Columbia University and will next travel to Portland, Maine. We are thrilled to highlight one of our faculty members on today's panel. Andrea Quealy is Associate Professor of Anthropology in the Department of Global and Sociocultural Studies at FIU. Dr. Quealy is also Associate Professor in the African and African Diaspora Studies program. Her book, Rescuing Our Roots, The African Anglo-Caribbean Diaspora in Contemporary Cuba, was published in 2015. Dr. Quealy's research interests include Caribbean migration, Cuba, African diaspora, race, social inequality, Black popular culture, and anthropological fieldwork. Specifically, her research concerns African diaspora, subject formation, migration, and the notion of globalized structural inequalities. Adler Gertier lives and works in Miami, Florida, where he received a BFA at the New World School of the Arts. Gertier recently had widely acclaimed solo exhibitions at the California Museum of African American Art and at the Perez Art Museum here in Miami. He has exhibited his work at the Vizcaya Museum and Gardens, the Bass Museum of Art, the Harn Museum, and in the Whitney Biennial in 2008. His works can be found in public collections, including the Museum of Contemporary Art North Miami and the Studio Museum in Harlem. Miami-based interdisciplinary artist Charo Oquette has a wide-ranging practice, including performance, sculpture, painting, video, and photography. She is known for her dynamic installations, which incorporate idioms of popular Afro-Caribbean religions. She has exhibited at the Pavilion of Contemporary Art in Italy, MoCA, North Miami, Bass Museum, New Zealand National Gallery, and the Museum of Modern Art in the Dominican Republic. Oquette's work is found in permanent collections like our own Frost Art Museum, the Bass Museum, the New Zealand National Museum, among others. And I'm very also proud to share with you that Charo is a graduate of FIU. Thank you all for being here, and I'll turn it over to you, Tatiana.
Thank you so much. It's incredibly exciting to be here because the exhibition originated in Long Beach, California, at the Museum of Latin American Art. And it was an exhibition that was funded by the Getty Foundation as part of a program called PST LA, so Pacific Standard Time LA. And presumably LA stood for Los Angeles, Latin America. But it also, and they wanted to keep the ambiguity because they also, it was inclusive of Latinx groups in the United States. The initiative was a tour de force in itself. It launched in September of 2017 after 5 years of preparation, and it encompassed over 70 exhibitions around Los Angeles and the surrounding cities, but it also 40 of those were funded by the Getty, and they also had a kind of broader umbrella initiative. So it was just wild to have the city of Los Angeles be completely devoted to Latin American art over a 4-month period last year. And so within that initiative, I had the opportunity to curate this exhibition, and it's a long story of how the exhibition came about, but basically part of the way that I thought to create an exhibition on the Caribbean was to respond to the idea of Latin America as a fixed geography, and I think that a lot of that was sort of the premise of LA was that Latin America consists of the Spanish-speaking countries of the south of the Mexican border and Brazil, and I wanted to think about Latin America in a just more exclusive and expansive way. So this exhibition, titled Relational Undercurrents: Contemporary Art of the Caribbean Archipelago, maps a view of Caribbean art based on artists who are descended originally or engaging with island countries in the Caribbean. And that was really deliberate because the concept of Latin America that most people are familiar with sort of thinks about the big countries, from Mexico to Argentina, and so it's often a continental narrative that gets emphasized. And what I really wanted to do with the exhibition was not only, argue for the inclusion of the Caribbean in thinking about Latin America, but also think about the places that are just almost always overlooked, and especially small countries, Caribbean islands. There's also a lot of things to say about Central America and other places in Latin America, and then countries in South America that are considered part of a Caribbean map that I didn't have the opportunity to say with this show. But this show is really taking the islands as a point of departure and arguing and kind of pushing back against a monolithic view of Latin America. So not only kind of contesting the continental narrative and contesting the Hispanophone privileging of the region, but also thinking about how histories are constructed in ways that really elevate some and then totally ignore others. And so it turned out, within this huge initiative of over 40 exhibitions that were getting funded and 70 total, 70 plus, that it was only one of 2 exhibitions focusing on the African diaspora. And the other was an exhibition at the Fowler Museum, which is a museum in UCLA, the UCLA campus, and that one was on art of Northeast Brazil and North Bahia. And so that was something that was really, notable, that, so Latin America and the concept of Latin America seemed to be really emphasizing different kinds of identities and not so much the Black experience in the Americas. And so that, and the exhibition is really kind of having a different sort of narrative around the Caribbean, not as exclusively an African diaspora, but just challenging some of the ideas and presuppositions. Another presupposition that is often made around the Caribbean is that it is a space of heterogeneity, that there are so many kind of specific nationalist histories that a regional narrative is almost impossible, because everything, and there's, even this has been theorized by people like Antonio Benitez Rojos, who talked about the Caribbean through the lens of chaos theory. And basically that the Caribbean is, akin to the workings of the chaos theory of mathematics. And so a lot of the narratives in the exhibitions that have come out, when they're not focused exclusively on art of Cuba or Jamaica or Haiti, for example, often that was the premise, heterogeneity, and so eclecticism. And I wanted to also tell a different story and look for the regional connecting threads. So those were sort of the premises that started off this just incredibly wonderful experience. I had originally, previously curated in the Caribbean, especially with one of the artists who unfortunately is not on view, but who was part of the show when it was exhibited at MOLA in Long Beach. And that's Christopher Cozier, an artist from Trinidad, and he was really kind of my teacher of Caribbean art. But as academically a Latin Americanist, I focused on Mexico in my dissertation and book research, and I'm from Venezuela originally. So I had a sense of, there's something that's really fragmented about these histories, and I wanted to kind of put all of that together and bring forth a narrative that speaks about that inclusion and that really opens up especially an understanding of Latin America that is coming out of the West Coast. And so there's very much that was also very much an interest, was to think about Latinx groups in the U.S. or other countries that are beyond kind of Mexico and the issue around the border that's so prevalent in California and the Southwest U.S. And think about other borders and think about other stories of people who have had experiences that have been marginalized in different ways, and how that kind of diversity can be narrated through an exhibition. But within that incredible experience of telling the story, I encountered artists like Lorraine Chado and a great many more from Miami who are here in the show. And as a person who's Venezuelan American, I'm also really sensitive to the ways in which knowledge about Venezuela or about Latin America is created, like wherever I'm not, so it's like knowledge is in Venezuela or somewhere else and so I'm, as a person who inhabits a diaspora space, really sensitive to ways in which my form of knowledge and what I can bring to the table often get understated by privileging national histories. And I know that a lot of the artists, at least about half, and originally the artists, there were over 80 artists in the show, and it's reduced from that number, but about half are based elsewhere. And in fact, the Caribbean itself is almost an original diaspora, because just of the patterns of colonization and indigenous peoples and cultures not prevailing in the islands. And so one of the things that Derek Walcott, the poet, St. Lucian poet, said was that the Caribbean is made up of people who come from elsewhere. And so that idea of diaspora and knowledge production is also very much at the heart of this project. So with that said, I'm really so excited to be part of this panel, to be talking to a different audience here in Miami, and I'm really looking forward to the Q&A and learning from you as well. And especially when you see the show, please come and talk to me about what your takeaways are. It's such a privilege, and I'm really grateful. So what I'd like to do is to ask my co-panelists to introduce themselves and their work, and we can start building our